And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, your host. Jimmy Lemke, due to circumstances beyond both of our controls, is not going to be with us this week. Though, of course, as always, you can find him on Twitter at PantherU and at PantherU.com. So it looks like I'm going to be flying solo this week. And do not forget, we've got our Twitter account at HorizonRT. Be sure to follow that. We are doing a few different things this week. Hoping to make a pretty decent sized announcement this week for future podcasts, as well as we're planning to have another one of our weekly polls. I think we're going to make that a weekly thing for now. So definitely at Horizon RT. And this week, since I am going it alone, I pretty much have carte blanche on whatever the heck I want to talk about. And this week, possibly, perhaps, miraculously, seems like it's been going on forever, Detroit Mercy. And this is per Tony Paul. He at the Detroit News tweeted out that Detroit Mercy may actually be getting around to announcing the hiring of a head coach this week. So theoretically, just do us a favor, Detroit Mercy. Make sure you make that announcement after the podcast is posted. That would be nice. Would appreciate that a lot. Yeah, here I am, asking for favors from Detroit Mercy, who have been bagging mercilessly, no pun intended, for the last month. So, good luck to me, I guess. So, it's been a long, drawn-out process. And it's cost. You've already had two transfers leave. You had Corey Allen, who's leaving. You've had Josh McFawley, who's transferring. And to make matters worse, one of their verbal commits, BJ Simmons, he had announced last week that he is going to be reopening his recruitment, which is going to be interesting timing for him. Although that's probably going to make a couple of schools kind of happy. And I believe Cleveland State might be one of them. So Cleveland State might be back in the BJ Simmons sweepstakes, possibly, among other schools. You might not actually be seeing the last of him in the Horizon League, but you never know. It happens. We'll find out soon enough, I suppose. But the biggest issue has been Detroit has 5 scholarships left, and they got to fill them. So whoever comes in, theoretically, you're probably going to see a lot of junior college transfers. You may see maybe a grad transfer or two. But it's going to be a very interesting, very late recruiting period for them. The other issue is you don't know exactly who's going to be left even after the coach is hired. The conventional wisdom for most in the Horizon League was that Jermaine Jackson, who's the assistant coach and was the assistant coach under Bakari Alexander, was the assistant coach under Ray McCallum, was the heir apparent. And there's been a lot of debate, obviously, as to whether or not he was the right choice and was the best person to move Detroit Mercy forward. I mean, after all, he is an alumni. He's rooted in Detroit, but there's obviously been some questions about whether or not he'd be an effective head coach, whether or not the program would be an even bigger train wreck than it is now. I don't see how that's possible, mind you, but that's just me. I thought the natural progression, make him he was named the interim head coach, knock the interim head coaching tag off of him, call it a day, because you're not really winning anything next year anyway. But that's not what happened. Fast forward a year later. Yeah, it seems like a year. I mean, this has been going on for more than a month, and it only seems like it's been a year. It seems like it's been, near more than a year. But the great thing about that is that opens up some new possibilities, I suppose. And great, I mean, again, at this point in time, you're looking at it from a standpoint of, Detroit Mercy probably wants to get somebody in there sooner rather than later. And apparently the answer is later on that, so that's always good. And two names have come up in the head coaching search. Three names, I should say. And the fourth has kind of snuck his way in over the course of the last couple of weeks. The first name that came up is the head coach at Division II Ferris State, Andy Bronkema, who just, if I understand it correctly, just recently won a Division II state title. Jeez Louise. See, this is what happens. I spent entirely too much time thinking about high school basketball in Michigan, mostly because most of Cleveland State's signees come from there. Not a big deal for me, but Ferris State Division II, NCAA Division II, they went ahead and they won the Division II title this year. You would think, in all likelihood, you would think that, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, it seems to me at this moment in time that you're seeing a lot of Horizon League teams go the Division II route. You saw it with Link Darner up at Green Bay. You see it with Jared Calhoun coming in from Fairmont State to Youngstown State. So you'd think that would be the case. We're gonna go this route too, but that's not really kind of what happened. You heard his name a couple of times, and then you didn't hear a whole heck of a lot after that. So one of the other things that has come up is a name that should be totally familiar to everybody in the Detroit area. And that is former Detroit Piston, Lindsey Hunter. And Lindsey Hunter, obviously, I mean, he's an institution in Detroit. He played in Detroit played for the Pistons, played on their 2004 championship team. Ironically, played on the Detroit Pistons at the same time as played on the Detroit Pistons for one season with Jermaine Jackson, I might add, which I find kind of ironic. And in addition, he's had coaching experience. He's been an assistant coach in the NBA. He was an assistant coach with the Phoenix Suns. He actually spent after they got rid of Alvin Gentry, they made him the interim head coach, and then he moved on to the Golden State Warriors. And then he ended up he spent a brief, he did actually spend some time at the college level as an assistant coach at the University of Buffalo. So conventional wisdom would tell you that maybe, you have a name here, you have a Detroit institution, and incidentally, thank you to everybody who took part in the Horizon Roundtable poll last week, because you made Lindsey Hunter the runaway winner for who you think is going to be the next coach at Detroit Mercy. The thing is, though, that his name has come up. His name has been bounced around for the last month as well. In addition, he's not the only one. The other name that's come up is Ernie Ziegler, who naturally I'd have to say should be familiar to all of us. He did spend another Detroit guy. Assistant coach, he started in just like everywhere else. He's been around for as an assistant for many years. Spent 6 years as the head coach of Central Michigan. He's now over at Mississippi State. So the other thing is that that has been a possibility as well. Not to mention, also, he was an assistant at Detroit Mercy as well. Ironically, again, was an assistant during the last couple of seasons of the Ray McCallum era. Ironically, he was the person, he came in after. Ironically, Jermaine Jackson came in after him. One of the things with Ernie Ziegler, of course, is the biggest thing with Ernie Ziegler is the fact that his record at Central Michigan was not the greatest. He had a record of 75 and 111. Didn't really exactly set the world on fire. His best season was in 2009, 2010, where they finished 15 and 15. Was first in the Western Division of the MAC, but again, not really anything to write home about. So what you have now is possibly, you do have somebody with head coaching experience, but at the same time, you have a guy who is kind of a wild card. I mean, he was a coach he was a mid-major coach, and it didn't exactly go that well the last time, which is kind of problematic. But again, he is a known quantity within the ranks of the Horizon League, having been an assistant coach at Detroit. Plus, he's kind of moved up. He's been an assistant coach at one of the Power 5 schools, which we've seen over and over again. And of course, then there's every other name that's getting bounced about. So the main ones have been Lindsey Hunter, been Ernie Ziegler, been Andy Bronkema. Another name that's been suggested and has been bounced about, and I guess again going back to the Division II part, is the University of Indianapolis. Their coach Stan Gerard, who for the last 2 weeks I've been horribly mutilating his last name, calling him Gouard. It's Gerard. Sorry about that, sir. Of course, I've never actually mentioned it on a podcast, so I just kind of told on myself right there. At the University of Indianapolis, I know at least a couple of people who'll be happy about that, not the least of which being my one of my old bosses, who was a All-American steeplechaser back in the day for the U of Indy. This year, it was a good season for him. He, not great. Was 19 and 9 this last season. Did have some good wins, but unlike Andy Bronkema, he did not make it to the NCAA tournament. However, that last season and the season before were kind of an aberration, because the 6 years prior to that, they'd made it to the Division II NCAA tournament. So, needless to say, there's a bit of a pedigree. And again, going back to this idea that the Horizon League is talking and has been focusing a lot on the Division II, looking at the Division II coaching talent out there, and looking at maybe kind of going outside of the box of the usual head coaching searches that have gone on in years past in the Horizon League. I mean, prior to Link Darner, prior to Link Darner, your previous Division II experience came from Jim Weissel from Loyola and Jerry Slocum at Youngstown State, and we know how both of those ended up. Weissel was replaced by Porter Mosier, and you know how that story goes, as a Final Four team, albeit not as a Horizon League team. And then Jerry Slocum, he kind of slogged along for a decade, until Youngstown State finally got tired of his act and he was not there anymore. So that's always fun. There's still a lot of unknowns, though. What is going to happen once they finally get around to announcing a head coach, and I don't want to discount. I know one of the voters did also mention Sean Retspert from Michigan State as a possible candidate. You can obviously, it's one of those tried and true things. One of those you can never go wrong with a Power Five assistant. Again, Ernie Ziegler is an assistant in the SEC. Prior to, so it stands to reason there might be there might be a Michigan State connection in there potentially. But the concern is, and it always has been, is that you're running out of time. The spring the spring signing period is almost over, and with only one signee in Corey Hightower coming in for them, unless I completely missed that one, the new coach is really got to hit the ground running, and there's not a lot of time. And then you also have this issue where you might, say for example, if it's not Jermaine Jackson, what happens to Jermaine Jackson Jr.? Does he leave? Does he transfer? What happens to Cameron Chapman? He declared for the NBA draft, didn't hire an agent, wanted to test the waters. Where does he go? What does he do? And there's just too many. And even the hiring of a head coach at Detroit Mercy is not going to answer all the questions. It's going to cause more of them. Needless to say, our expectation at this point in time, even within the Horizon League and within Detroit Mercy itself, is this is going to be a crap year for Detroit. The Titans aren't going anywhere. They're going to sit at the bottom of the Horizon League standings like they always have, at least like they always have in the last since last season. Like it's a struggle. Now the concern is not only are you sitting at the bottom of the Horizon League standings, how long are you going to sit there? Is it going to be one of those situations like you had at UIC where UIC was at the bottom of the heap for so many years before Steve McLean came along? And even the first year of Steve McLean, he had to he struggled that first year, and you wonder what has to happen to be able to create a level of it's a short-term solution. You're just looking at Detroit right now. You're looking at Detroit Mercy, and you're looking at a team that's probably going to be sitting at the bottom of the standings for at least not this upcoming season, but the next season after that. And you have to think that's true. You don't want it to be true because the Horizon League had a really bad year last year. The last thing that the Horizon League needs at this moment in time is a whole boatload of new anchor. And right now you have Detroit Mercy as an anchor, or for one reason or another, because they thought they had their guy. They thought they had their guy in Bakari Alexander. Turns out that was not correct. Turns out that's a whole lot of wrong. So you make that mistake. And it's not necessarily that you thought it was a mistake at the time. But slowly but surely you seem to see that, maybe you should have thought of that again. But how do you think about that when you got a guy when you originally had a guy who was a part of the Detroit Mercy family and knew this program, knew the system, knew all of these things, and was on the up and up as an assistant from Michigan. So you saw that, you thought about that, and you thought, yeah, that makes a little bit of sense. And now, 2 seasons in, it flames out spectacularly, and you're left to wonder why. Well, not necessarily why, but you're left to wonder, who's coming in to pick up the pieces. If it's not Jermaine Jackson, Which, let's face it, if if they're sitting here waiting to better deal him, I can't see how it is. I mean, you don't spend a month, going through resumes and saying, well, we got you here as an interim, Jermaine, but let's see if we can find someone better. How's that going to sit? And how's that going to sit with his son? Does he really want to stay? Who knows? But that's the biggest issue here with Detroit Mercy, and that's kind of the problem that they have at this point. So, one of the other things that I did also notice, and this was kind of an under the radar thing, at least to me, is that Oakland's Isaiah Brock, staying in Michigan, because why not? Isaiah Brock is leaving Oakland. Consider that kind of a mild surprise, just because of the fact that it was a guy who did bring a lot to the table for Oakland. He was one of the primary shot blockers, outstanding shot blocker. He had Isaiah Brock's story was just a great story. The guy who served in the military, got noticed by Greg Campy. Really had to fight to fight the NCAA to even get on the court his freshman year. And that's something that you always think about. But also, too, you think about that there was a question last year whether or not he was going to be back or not. And then he was back, and that was kind of the end of the discussion. But it turns out it wasn't. It didn't end that way. He is now heading over to he's going down divisions. So he's going to Grand Valley State, where undoubtedly he's probably going to dominate. I mean, as he was pretty damn dominant in the paint at Oakland. And that also does raise a couple of questions. Not too many, obviously. We're talking about Oakland, who is, you want to say that they're bringing them some new faces, pretty much all over the place, and you're losing. Is it going to? I mean, the question they now have is, as disappointing as Oakland was last season, is it going to be a down year for them? And the answer is you don't know, because look at what happened. You lose. Kendrick Nunn is graduating. Martez Walker is gone. Jalen Hayes is gone. Nick Daniels is gone. Now you add in Isaiah Brock. Chris Palomizio transferred too. I mean, those are a lot of individuals that you'd like to have on your team next year. And then you have Williams out for 4 of them. Then you have a couple of transfers come in, and then you don't know. I mean, you don't know, but it is Greg Campy, so he did have himself he's had a pretty productive spring signing period. So it stands to reason that you want to say it's going to be a down year for Oakland, but at the same time, do you really count on Greg Campy? I wouldn't say that you wouldn't. But this is the Horizon League 2018, so anything is possible. They could lose 20 games and nobody would be surprised, because it's Horizon League 2018. Kind of find that interesting that all of a sudden the Horizon League has just, I mean, we've talked about it in multiple podcasts did we see the bottom of the Horizon League? I was originally a little more optimistic that the Horizon League would improve next season, but now I'm not really entirely sure, because you got to look at it from a standpoint of, wow, you have all of these people. You add in, you have the Detroit situation, which is just absolutely terrible. You have Milwaukee, where you lose your top scorers and you don't know what you're getting back. You have Oakland disappointed, and you lose your top score, most of your top scorers, and one of your top shot blockers. I don't know. I don't know if this is I don't know if the Horizon League recovers next year now. I was a little more optimistic, but man, this offseason's been brutal. I mean, it's not been. You'd like to think that you've seen this before, but you really haven't. I mean, maybe I have. I mean, maybe I completely blacked out all the terrible memories of the mid 2000s when Cleveland State was losing 25 games a year, and Youngstown State was a continual anchor, and there. That's another issue. You don't know what you're getting out of all those junior college signees from Youngstown State. So many different questions. And that brings me to the next thing, which is, at this point in time, the spring signing period is drawing to a close. And I should make mention of the fact that kind of a programming note for you. Next week, we'll be off. We'll be back the week of the 20th. So we'll have a much clearer picture on who has finalized their signees. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. You're going to have junior college transfer. You're going to have grad transfer signing. Last year Cleveland State pulled Stefan Kenich out of their asses. So that was things coming out of left field. But by and large, you have the Horizon League pretty much all. You'd like to think that it's all pretty much sewn up. Detroit's situation aside, you only have a handful of scholarships left to play with on the Horizon League front. You got IUPUI, they've got one spot open. You look at Oakland, in spite of losing Isaiah Brock, you still only have one scholarship open. Same as the case, Northern Kentucky. They're pretty much all filled up too. I know they were hoping for Armand Davis. They've still got one slot open. Still got some pretty big firepower coming in from there. So you have you got Wright State, who's got all kinds of people come back next year. You have Wright State probably Wright State like Northern Kentucky isn't that good position where you got Parker and Townsend, Cole Gentry, and certainly not least Jalen Hall, and certainly not least Loud Love, the freshman of the year. He's coming back. But you look at it and then oddly enough, and this is the part that UIC, in spite of the fact that they're losing Dikembe Dixon, they been able to bring their own group too. They're all full up. Looks like they've got their full complement of people. Not to mention the fact that you have Godwin Bowen, Marcus Sadi, Tarkus Ferguson. They're all coming back. Jordan Lown is as well. These are all things that you want to look at as positives. And you also look at it from a standpoint of there is some room at some of the schools. Most of the schools all signed. They've got all their people signed up. They're all good. The Green Bay, they've got all their folks on. Incidentally, I might add, one of those folks happens to be, and I'm sure this is. I wish Jimmy was on because Jaquan McLeod has magically reappeared in the Horizon League, near as I can tell. So that's kind of an interesting situation for them. But one wild card in all of this, for the one wild card in terms of open scholarship slots, is at Cleveland State. Cleveland State, which is bringing a boat of people already. You had five signings in the spring period, both in the fall and spring already. You had Rashad Williams come in. You had Seth Miller, Baji Walker, Deontay Spider Johnson. You had Lam Hill, who's a junior college transfer, and you also have Evan Claiborne, who's a transfer from DePaul. But oddly enough, impressively enough, you still have a handful of scholarships left, as it turns out. So, on top of which was made, I guess, possible by the fact that Dontel Highsmith transferred. Evan Claiborne transferred. He's going to be going to North Carolina Central to go play for Lavelle Moton. Incidentally, I have to say, if there's ever a Horizon League spot, Lavelle Moton, probably one of the. He's a really good coach. I think I'd love to have him in the Horizon League. Not sure if there would ever be a spot for him, but love to have him here. So that's where Evan Claiborne's going to play. Sean Christian has transferred to a Division II school, Salem University. So he is, and Sean Christian incidentally represents the second to last Gary Waters recruit / player. He was the Gary Waters signee from the fall signing period, last season of Gary Waters. Cash Thomas is it. He's the last one left. But with all of that turnover, Cleveland State still has Tyree Appleby, still has Cash Thomas, has Aljavon Eichelberger, who's been practicing, who's ready to go, raring to go. And you have Steph Kenich, who, in spite of so much hand-wringing, guys, is, as far as I know, is going to still be on this team. Guys got to stop freaking out that Steph Kenich is going anywhere. He's not. He really isn't. And so you add in the mix all of these new freshmen and also Jalam Hill. But the thing is, you still have 4 slots left for Cleveland State. So I'm very interested in seeing how that's going to play out, because it's one of those situations where you see some opportunities. You don't see a lot I don't personally see a lot on the pure high school recruit signees front. I mean, they got 4 of them already. They got Williams, they've got Walker, they've got pure freshmen. They've got Milner, they've got Spider. You don't see, I really don't see Dennis go the high school route. I mean, he's already, like everybody else in the Horizon League, they're all thinking 2019 with all at this point in time. You're seeing a whole boatload of people that are signing, offering for 2019 already. So I think by and large, I think, and I could be wrong, of course, I think as far as the high school signees is going, BJ Simmons notwithstanding, I do see kind of the route that ideally I would think. And again, remember, with Cleveland State, you didn't see anything about Steph Kenich until way later. Nobody knew who he was. I mean, he came in, he, as far as you knew, you never heard of him before in your entire life. He was on the Serbian junior national team, didn't even come in until way later didn't come in and all of a sudden the guy's starting for Cleveland State and does a pretty damn good job as a freshman, along with Tyree Appleby. That's the core of the Cleveland State team. Tyree Appleby, Cash Thomas, Stefan Kenich. Now, do they sign another junior college player? I know earlier last weekend they had Marcus Burwell come in as for his official visit over the weekend, coming out of Eastern Junior College. Or do they do what they did last year? Do they bring in a 1 or 2 additional junior college graduate transfers? Which is again ironic that Cleveland State, who many lamented with their own graduate transfers 3 years back, may be the primary beneficiary of that this year. They were last year when they got Dontel Highsmith. It stands to reason that they could very well be that group again. And there's a lot of them out there. Plenty to choose from. I mean, they're going to need some help in the backcourt. You'd like to see get some additional help in the backcourt now that Sean Christian's out of the rotation. You'd love to see Marcus Burwell sign with them. You'd like to see some additional, you'd like to see another body in the front court. Cleveland State fans were hoping that another Serbian Uros Plavsic was going to be making his way to the Viking roster, but then he magically became a 4-star recruit and signed with Arizona State. joining coincidentally former Cleveland State Rob Edwards, who's going to be starting there, who's going to be playing his first year after sitting out a year at Arizona State. And as I understand it, and they have yet to announce it, this may be the case as well. But one of their assistants, I believe, is going to be heading over to Arizona State as well. So, but you'd like to see Cleveland State get another body, which is interesting because for so many years, the biggest gripe at Cleveland State was you didn't have enough size. You didn't have enough size. And I got a bunch of guys who are 6'5", 6'6". I mean, yeah, and that's on the low end. The one other thing, and the other thing that I do look at as well, is that you do have a couple of X factors. And I say this on the walk-on front. Dennis Felton had brought in David Payne and Devin Stover, and as I understand it, talking to the guys over at the Reserve News, Devin Stover has some talent. So there might be, Dennis Felton might look at that, look at the guys he's got as walk-ons and think, hey, maybe I want to give him a shot. Maybe they might have they may be developed enough where they have the talent where I might let them, get some minutes in the rotation. And in that backcourt, you're going to need it, because as of right now, you've got 3 solid guys in the backcourt. I mean, really solid guys. But then you have to think about, do you want to have do you include a third in there? Do you include a fourth in there? Or again, do you have, as Dennis Felton has mentioned, the whole positionless thing where you have your point guard and then not a guy who is not under 6'5" out on the court, with a distinct possibility. But you never know. You could look at the situation at Cleveland State and think, yeah, well, maybe they're going to have another down year as well. But again, because you have Thomas, because you have Thomas, you have Kenich, and you have Tyree Appleby. You have 3 really good players. And plus, you have a Eichelberger who's been chomping at the bit to start. So you think that they can expound on that. They can really look at getting some momentum on that tournament run, which would be nice. Which would be a nice change of pace to losing 20 games every single stinking year. It's called progress. We haven't seen it at Cleveland State in a while, but we can identify that it does exist. And I think the tournament run from last season should certainly qualify as what I would like to call success. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close out this solo session of the Horizon Roundtable. I promise not to do this to you guys again. Next episode, there will be other people to talk to. I have the utmost confidence Jimmy will be that person. We'll get him back on here, and we'll get back into our same shtick as we always do. But as I always say at the end of every episode, you can find all episodes of the Horizon Roundtable, not just the new ones. We've got the archives up as well, up on sportshex.com, HAX.com. And you can find us wherever good podcasts are found. So check out iTunes, check out TuneIn, Pocket Cast. I use Google Play Music, Stitcher. I know we're on there too. So be sure to check that out. And again, we will be off next week. So we'll see you the week of the 20th. Thank you for listening.